When we enter the realm of relationships, we are not merely dealing with two personalities on the surface. We are touching the unconscious, archetypes, projections, hidden fears, and silent longings. A man does not test a woman in the way a teacher examines a student. Rather, unconsciously, he seeks to discover whether she can meet him not just at the level of desire, but at the level of the soul. A man's tests are rarely deliberate. They emerge from his unconscious, driven by his search for a partner who can balance his inner chaos, challenge his shadows, and honor his essence. Let us unfold these tests through 4 psychological truths. The first way in which a man unconsciously tests a woman is through the search for authenticity. On the surface, it may look like simple questioning, teasing, or small provocations, but beneath it lies a profound psychological process. A man, whether he is aware of it or not, does not want to be bound to an illusion. He longs to encounter what is genuine, unshaken, and true in the woman before him. This need arises because every human relationship is a mirror, and a man instinctively understands that if the woman he desires hides behind masks, then the reflection he receives will be distorted. In such distortion, there is no trust, and without trust, the possibility of real intimacy collapses. From the perspective of depth psychology, this is the confrontation with the persona. The persona is the face we wear to the world, the polished mask that helps us move through society. It is useful, it allows us to be accepted, but it is not the essence of who we are. When a man tests for authenticity, he is probing, often subtly, to see if the woman he wants can drop the mask and reveal the person behind it. He may challenge her opinions, question her reactions, or even observe her in moments of discomfort, not to undermine her, but to see whether her responses are rooted in truth or in performance. Authenticity is magnetic because it is rare. Many people, both men and women, fall into roles that they believe will make them more desirable: the agreeable partner, the endlessly patient caretaker, the flawless beauty, the intellectual ideal. Yet none of these roles can be sustained in the long run without a fracture of the self. A man who is serious about a woman seeks to feel that what she offers him is not a performance designed to hold his attention, but a reality that can endure the storms of relationship. He unconsciously asks, will she remain who she is when the stage lights are off? When no one else is watching, will she still stand in the same truth? This test often manifests in situations where the woman feels pulled to please or to impress. The man may withhold approval or resist easy validation, not as a calculated strategy, but because his deeper psyche is searching for something real. If she bends too quickly, if she sacrifices her essence just to win his favor, the unconscious registers it as instability. But if she stands rooted in who she is, even at the cost of disapproval, something inside him settles. He recognizes strength, integrity, and a center that cannot be bought or broken. The demand for authenticity also arises because a man's own psyche wrestles with illusion and reality. He projects his anima, the feminine aspect of his unconscious, onto the woman he desires. At first, she may embody all of his fantasies, carrying the weight of his dreams and longings. But projection always fades, and what remains afterward is the true encounter. The test of authenticity is the bridge between fantasy and reality. It determines whether the relationship can survive beyond projection, whether the woman can hold her own essence without being swallowed by what the man imagines her to be. In this sense, authenticity becomes not only a test for the woman, but a mirror for the man himself. Her ability to remain real challenges him to do the same, to step out of his illusions and into a more honest connection. Authenticity, then, is not just about words or behaviors, but about energy, about the solidity of the soul. It is the quiet yet powerful declaration, "This is who I am, and I will not betray myself to be chosen." The second way a man unconsciously tests a woman is through her boundaries, the invisible lines that protect her dignity, her values, and her emotional world. Boundaries are not walls, they are gates, and a man instinctively wants to know whether those gates are firmly in place or easily broken down. If a woman cannot guard her inner life, then what she offers to him will be fragile, vulnerable to exploitation, and unable to sustain the depth that true intimacy demands. For this reason, a man often pushes, sometimes intentionally but more often unconsciously, against the limits of a woman's patience, her tolerance, and her capacity to say no. It is not cruelty that drives this test, but the archetypal search for strength. Every man, even if he cannot articulate it, knows that without boundaries a relationship dissolves into chaos. He may test by being late, by withdrawing suddenly, by pressing too hard for something she does not want to give, or by creating small moments of conflict. These acts are not always conscious decisions but eruptions of his psyche, ways of asking, "Will she hold her line? Will she protect her own essence even against my pressure?" The man does not want a servant or someone who sacrifices herself endlessly to please him. He wants a partner whose strength can command respect. A woman who cannot assert her boundaries may initially appear agreeable and accommodating, but over time, this lack of self-protection breeds resentment, imbalance, and emotional instability. In Jungian terms, this test represents the interaction of the anima and the animus, the eternal dance between masculine and feminine energies. The masculine principle is active, penetrating, pressing outward. The feminine principle is receptive, containing, and holding form. When a man presses against a woman's boundaries, he is unconsciously seeking to feel whether her feminine container is strong enough to balance his active force. If she collapses, if she allows intrusion without discernment, then the polarity is lost, and with it the possibility of genuine attraction and respect. But if she responds with clarity, calm strength, and the willingness to say no, the man feels both challenged and reassured. He recognizes that her no does not diminish intimacy, but protects it. These moments of testing can be subtle. A man may interrupt her repeatedly, watching to see whether she will reassert her voice or allow herself to be silenced. He may make a request that crosses her values to see whether she resists or complies. He may even create distance, just to observe whether she abandons her own center in a desperate attempt to pull him back. In each of these cases, he is not simply observing her actions, he is measuring the strength of her inner structure. A woman who maintains her boundaries without anger, without collapse, demonstrates an integrity that commands devotion. What makes boundaries so vital is that they are not only about the woman's ability to protect herself, but about her ability to protect the relationship itself. Without boundaries, love becomes entangled in dependency, manipulation, and resentment. With boundaries, love is given freely, not out of fear or compulsion, but out of choice. A man feels safest, paradoxically, when he knows there are places he cannot cross without permission. It assures him that the woman he desires is not a reflection of his whims, but a sovereign being capable of true partnership. Boundaries, then, are not barriers to intimacy, but the very structure that makes intimacy possible. The third way in which a man tests a woman lies in the domain of loyalty during adversity. It is easy to remain close, affectionate, and supportive when life is calm and the sun shines without interruption. But every man carries within himself an unspoken question. Will she remain when the storm comes? Will she walk beside me when I am no longer at my best? This test is not necessarily deliberate. It arises from the man's unconscious awareness of his own fragility, his shadow, and the inevitable hardships that life brings. No man is always strong, always certain, or always admirable. Sooner or later, his flaws, fears, and darker impulses will reveal themselves. What he seeks, often without knowing it, is whether the woman he desires will vanish at the first sign of weakness or whether she has the resilience to see him through those shadows. In psychological terms, this test is tied to the encounter with the shadow. Every individual carries parts of themselves they would rather not expose. The insecurities, the wounds, the failures, the unpolished and imperfect aspects of the self. When a man allows these sides to surface, consciously or not, he is placing himself in a vulnerable position. The woman's response to these moments becomes a mirror of what the relationship is truly built upon. If she recoils, judges harshly, or withdraws in fear, he feels that her love was only for the mask he wore, not for the man beneath it. But if she holds steady without trying to rescue him, without abandoning herself, but simply staying present with his imperfection, then she communicates a depth of loyalty that resonates with his unconscious longing. This is not to say that a man wants blind devotion or endurance of abuse. Rather, he wants to know whether the bond extends beyond convenience and surface attraction. He may test this by withdrawing emotionally, going silent for a time, or revealing a truth that exposes his vulnerability. He may falter in his confidence, fail in some endeavor, or show sides of himself that lack polish and charm. These are not always intentional trials, but they serve the same purpose. They reveal whether the woman's presence depends only on circumstances, or whether it flows from a deeper commitment to who he is in essence. For many men, the fear of being abandoned in moments of weakness is profound. Society trains men to be pillars of strength, providers, protectors, figures who do not falter. But the psyche knows that this is not always possible, and so he unconsciously longs for reassurance that when he does stumble, he will not be left to face the darkness alone. The woman who can stay present in these moments, not by taking on his burdens as her own, but by showing calm steadiness and refusal to flee, becomes irreplaceable in his eyes. Her loyalty is not passive submission but active endurance, the ability to witness his shadow without becoming consumed by it. Adversity also strips away illusions. It reveals whether love is conditional upon comfort, or whether it is anchored in something deeper. When the man tests for loyalty, he is, at the deepest level, searching for that anchor. He wants to know if the relationship is rooted in the eternal, not merely in the passing. If she proves steady in the storm, then he knows he has found not only a lover, but a companion of the soul. The fourth way a man tests a woman is through vision, the ability to see beyond who he is in the present moment into who he has the potential to become. Every man is in some way unfinished. He is a work in progress, a being constantly pulled between his current reality and the greater possibilities that lie dormant within him. A man who desires a woman on a deep level does not only look for beauty, companionship, or passion. He longs to feel whether she carries within her the capacity to recognize and honor the path of his becoming. This test is not about blind idealization or unrealistic fantasies, but about whether she can look at his incomplete state without contempt and still glimpse the seeds of his future self. When a man unconsciously tests for vision, he may share his dreams, his ideas, or his ambitions, often in vulnerable and uncertain tones. He does not present them as finished achievements but as fragile hopes that could easily be dismissed or ridiculed. What he looks for in the woman he desires is whether she diminishes them or whether she nurtures them with belief. A woman who mocks, doubts, or treats his vision as insignificant cuts into the very essence of his masculine drive. For the masculine psyche is always oriented toward direction, toward moving into the unknown, toward building something larger than the self. A woman who believes in his vision, even when it is not yet realized, becomes a source of strength, not by doing the work for him, but by holding space for his future to unfold. This test of vision is linked to the archetype of the self in Jungian psychology, the deeper unity that draws both man and woman toward wholeness. A man's journey toward his higher potential is rarely linear. It is full of setbacks, failures, and doubts. When he reveals these to a woman, he is unconsciously asking, "Can you see me as more than what I am today? Can you see the man I might become if I continue to grow?" It is not about blind worship or unconditional acceptance, but about recognition of possibility. The feminine principle, when rooted in wisdom, does not merely mirror back the present image of the man, but calls forth his latent greatness. This test also appears in subtle ways. A man may speak of his struggles at work, his creative ideas, or his long-term goals, and he watches to see whether the woman treats them as distractions or as meaningful parts of his inner life. He may express fear of failure, and her response tells him whether she can hold both his weakness and his striving in the same embrace. If she reduces him to what he currently is, he feels confined and unseen. But if she acknowledges the struggle while reminding him of his deeper strength, she embodies the role of the visionary partner, the one who sees further than his present limitations. To a man, this quality is not superficial encouragement, but an affirmation that his journey has meaning. The woman who sees his becoming provides a form of psychological oxygen, giving him room to rise beyond his current state. This does not mean she tolerates stagnation or indulges fantasy, but that she recognizes movement and honors the process of growth. The test of vision is, therefore, a search for resonance at the soul level, where love is not merely a reflection of who one is, but a call toward who one is destined to be. So when men test women, it is not cruelty, it is instinct. It is not a game, it is archetypal. He is searching not for perfection, but for resonance, not for a servant, but for a partner. The question is not whether you pass his test, but whether his tests awaken the truth of who you are. For in the end, the relationship is not about becoming what he wants, but about both partners becoming more dearly themselves in the light of love.